Hey everyone, and welcome today to Reigniting Small Business, the podcast. I'm Laura Richards. I'm here today with Patrick Lee, CEO of Spark Business Institute. Hey, Patrick.
Hello.
So, Patrick, today we are welcoming Jeff Cochran, who's President and Chief Solutions Officer of Exclamation Communications. Jeff recently co-founded Link Raleigh, which is at linkraleigh.com. It's an invitation-only event for C-suite and business owners who meet bi-monthly at the City Club in downtown Raleigh. And Jeff has recently launched Exit Planning Exchange as well, also the Raleigh chapter. And that's to bring professionals serving businesses in transition together to build relationships and share knowledge. And I'm going to bring Jeff on with us now. Welcome, Jeff.
Hey, Laura. Hey, Patrick. How are you today?
Hello. Good.
Doing well. So, Jeff, thank you for joining us to talk about how business owners go about building solid relationships through networking, and how those help them to succeed both in business and in life.
Happy to be here. Appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.
So, Jeff and Patrick, I know that this is going to be a fascinating conversation, and I'm going to pop off so I can take some notes, and I will join up with you guys kind of towards the end of the podcast to recap and say goodbye.
Sounds good. Thanks, Laura.
All right.
All right, Jeff. So Jeff and I go way back, and we're here to talk about networking. Jeff's claim to fame, I think, is more sales and marketing, but he took an interesting path to explore networking. And so let me just set sort of the picture here, because we've talked about this a lot, how networking is very frustrating for a lot of folks. It feels like it's a necessary thing to do, right? But the venues and the methods for networking seem old and outdated. You know, you go to a networking event, people are just hawking their wares, and how many business cards can be handed out, and you leave and you're not sure if you accomplished anything. And whenever I'm looking at exploring this or looking at it, Jeff's always got a unique perspective, because he's been perfecting as he's created different working opportunities. He's been perfecting as he went along. So we're going to do this conversation today, not just to explore his path, and also to see if we can get some answers around this. So with that sort of intro, Jeff, what do you have to say?
Oh my, I have to say my phone is ringing. Sorry.
Well, it's probably business, so that's a good thing, right?
It would be a good thing. Yes. Sorry about that. I am so sorry. I didn't turn that off. So I totally agree that, the situation that we've been in over the last 20 months or so has been really a struggle for a lot of folks in terms of networking and knocking on doors and making phone calls. A lot of those techniques we just couldn't do, or we couldn't get through to people. And so, you've got to look for ways to connect with people, be generous with your network, and make a difference for the people that you want to help.
Yeah, no. And I think that's sort of the key. I think a lot of times networking is thought of strictly as a place to make a sale, but in reality, that's sales. Networking is a place to establish a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm. And it's a long game. It's not something that, typically you go into and you get a lead or a referral the first time. And because people need to learn to, appreciate who you are and trust you and recognize that, you've got something you can bring to the table and help their clients if they're going to make a referral, right? So it's not something that just happens in one meeting.
No, it doesn't. And that's frequently one of the weaknesses, which we can come back to a little bit later. So one of the things, whenever we talk about this, because we've actually talked about this a lot, and the story almost always starts for you with a combination of two things. One was, a fluctuation in your business that made you realize you're going to have to do something a little bit different. But at the same time, there's a book that you consistently bring up that sort of started you on this journey. So tell us about that.
Right. So the book that I'll hold up here is Never Eat Alone by Keith Ferrazzi. Look, there are a lot of great books out there, but this one really spoke to a personal experience that Keith Ferrazzi's dad had when, he was working in the steel mills in Western Pennsylvania. And the owner of the steel mill came through and they had a chance to chat. And ultimately, what we see is an owner of an organization or a business that was generous to his employee and helped provide a better education for his son than maybe he would have gotten otherwise in that part of the state. And so, I don't know about you, but generous people usually appeal to me. And so, I think that anytime you can help others and treat them like you want to be treated, regarding, making connections and spending a little time it's a good thing to do, and it feels good to do it. But it's just good business sense as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And the timing of all this is interesting because, you read the book, you began thinking about what you were going to do. Shortly thereafter, you founded Lincolnapolis, and then after that, Link Columbia. But tell us the story around that, because the story's kind of interesting as to what, pushed you to just jump in and get this going.
Well, leading up to the Great Recession of 2007, I mean, our business had been around for about 14 years. It was doing fine. It was, we had a great natural network and really didn't do a whole lot of, structured networking, right? But when this recession hit, I'll tell you, I think I had my second December in a row that had a really lousy number associated with it in terms of what our revenue was. And so I had been invited to an event in Rockville. And I went to this event, and there were 400 people there, and they had lousy wine and all the food was gone. And I talked to 12 people. And when I walked out of there, I was just exhausted. And as an extrovert, that usually doesn't happen, right? But I walked out of there thinking, I learned something tonight. I think I can do this better in Annapolis. And better didn't mean bigger. It just meant better. And so as my wife and I've run our business together for a number of years. Our hallmark of someone coming into our house is they see the hospitality that we bring to the table, and so I wanted to be hospitable. I wanted to be generous with my network. I wanted to be part of a solution, not the problem. And so I partnered up with a couple of local business leaders in Annapolis, and we launched Lincolnapolis.
Now the numbers were interesting because you talk about combining your network and then who showed up and how it all happened.
Well, it was kind of funny because one of the guys had a big network. One of them had about 75 people that he shared. And bottom line is we had 900 that we started with. 90 said they were coming, 75 showed up. And, and that was one of the lower attendance records for the 6.5 years that I ran Lincolnapolis. About 3.5 years into it, I started Link Columbia. And that was a smaller, more intimate group there. I think we usually were between 35 and 50 folks. And then something else that came out of this, after a year, both those guys that I started this with had decided, they were busy enough with their businesses. Things had kind of come back online for them. And so they were going to step away. And I started Link Lunch Club. And so I had 2 lunches a week. For
I
about
was at
2.5
of those lunches
for probably 2.5 years, and they were well received, and we moved around the city and ate at different places. And it's so funny because so often a day or two later I'd be in a coffee shop, and I'd see people that were just at the lunch club, and they had met each other for the first time, and now they were going deeper. So, that was kind of part of, what transpired from that. You might remember Biz Book Briefs. We did that as well as a way to bring people in. So we had people who like to enjoy company. We had people who like to, get information, and then we had people who like to eat. So we were trying to bring all those folks together and make it make some sense. And, I have to say, I probably told you this before, but I think in year 2 through 4, I could clearly identify about $300,000 worth of revenue that came into Exclamation Communications as a result of it. Yeah. So it was definitely helpful.
So let's talk about, the idea here is not just that you founded some things and all. There are some core tenets that exist around meaningful networking. And I think a lot of times folks just assume networking means you just show up with some business cards. What are those core tenets?
Well, there are a lot of articles on the internet about that, and there's 10, there's 5, there's 4. For me, part of it is if I'm walking into a room, I want to be prepared before I go. If they allow you to see who's coming, you want to kind of do who does it make sense for me to connect with, right? Okay. And then in addition to that, you always want to meet the host. Who's running this thing? They're going to know better who's in the room than anybody else. They're going to connect you with the right people. So if you're visiting for the first time, make sure you meet them. Make sure you say goodbye to them when you leave and thank them. All too often, I think if we go to a party, the right thing to do, our mothers taught us, make sure you go find, the person who invited you and say, thanks so much for having me, and see you next time, that kind of thing, right? So same thing. And I think also, be helpful when you're there. So this idea of, meeting the host and maybe there's a couple things that need to be done just before the event starts. So show up a little early, leave late, and while you're there, be available to be helpful in any way you can be. And those are things that are appreciated by the folks that put it on. And if you're connecting with the person who puts an event on, you have a better shot at getting some help and connecting with the people you might want to meet when you're there.
Yeah, I like that you brought up earlier the idea of the generosity piece, right? Like, be generous with your network, be generous with being helpful and all. And my favorite story is, I had reached out to you trying to get some help networking in for some leads and other things around a business I was involved in at the time. And we met at a coffee shop, and you came in and you had 2 paper bags full of something with you, and you sat down and you poured out on the table probably thousands, but we'll say hundreds of business cards that you had organized with rubber bands, and you had everything on them. And I could ask you any question and you could go find it. Now, I know we've advanced technologically beyond that, but at the time, it was impressive, the network that you brought with you immediately, and were absolutely willing to just answer any question, introduce me to anybody. I was duly impressed.
Well, thanks. Well, today we pretty much use LinkedIn for that sort of thing, right? We just flip our computers around and let the other guy take a look at it. But yeah, we collected a lot of cards over the years, and I have to say that I've always liked cards because I can connect a face and an identity, a logo, a business to that face, and so that's always helpful. But yeah, happy to have done that, and it is funny how things have changed over the years.
Yeah, but it's also kind of instructive, I think, for people to hear that a little bit, though, because we feel now with social media and everything, LinkedIn, like you said, that it's so easy to stay connected. But you dumped out hundreds of cards on that table right there, and you knew those people. And before we had made it technologically insignificant almost to stay in contact, you just send out a tweet, right?
Right.
You were in contact with that network, so it stayed live despite no technology to back it up.
Well, that's true. And, really, one of the things that I did, and I would highly recommend this to anybody, but is that, after the event, I would follow up with everybody who actually showed up and just say, hey, if there's something I can do to be helpful, anybody you need to meet, that sort of thing, just let me know. It was short and sweet. I wasn't pushing what I did for a living. I was just saying, hey, I'm here to help. Let me know how I can help you. Right. And I think that's one of the things that I've seen over the years. You go, I have a friend who was in the military, and he used to say, I don't care what you say, just do what you say. And his deal was, look, if I'm at an event and you say to me, hey, I'm going to call you tomorrow, or I'm going to follow up, or I'm going to send you an email, and you don't do it, then, that's a ding against your character, right? Because I'm thinking, what happened here? You said you were going to do it, and now you're not doing it. I realize people forget, but I guess what I'm saying is, you go to an event like that, you want to come prepared with a plan. You want to come in and say, I want to meet 2 new people. I want to connect with 5 people I already know. You know what? And I also have a 1-drink rule. If you're at an event, you drink 1 drink max, because you want to be able to, remember what you committed to. And when people do have business cards and you can write on them, guess what? You should actually make a note and say, and I know a lot of people have been coming to events now since COVID's over, or at least COVID networking, has begun again, right? Post-COVID. Okay. And, they come to events, they don't have a card with them. They go, I don't know where they are.
Uh-oh.
Forgot to bring my card. So anyway, bottom line, you have to have a system for remembering, who you met with or who you talked to, and follow up with them.
Yeah. So one of the things that is helpful with doing that too is this. If you're as generous as you're indicating you should be as a tenant, and you're going out to be helpful and you reach out to people and you do what you say you're going to do, right? Mm-hmm. You very quickly whittle down to the network that's useful to you, because not everybody's going to do that. Yeah. So I call it the reciprocity gene, right? Like if you do something for somebody, but they never make any effort to do anything for you, that's not necessarily a good cog in your network, right? It's the ones who do go back and forth that make a meaningful network.
Right. And, that kind of brings to mind another book, When Networking Isn't Working. That's a book that that's out that you could pick up on Amazon, I think. And the whole idea around that is, look, get some control over your network, build relationships, have a key or core group of people, kind of like when we were in Bond together, right? I mean, there was a CPA, an attorney, and a graphic design guy, and a web guy, and a this and that, right? So they were all there to to really build rapport and relationships. And so if you can control, or I don't mean control in a bad way, I just mean you can initiate that kind of a relationship with people who are your core go-to folks, then it doesn't mean that you should never network after that. Of course, you have to keep things fresh and make connections and so forth. But having a core group of people that can serve your clients well is really ideal.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's flip to this last, this year and a half of COVID weirdness and all. So, what did you experience networking during COVID? What do you think are things that changed during COVID that may stick with us for a while? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. Well, I wish I had bought Zoom stock. That's what I can tell
we
you.
all wish we bought Zoom.
And I kept saying to my guy, hey, what about Zoom? Right. But look, everybody's got Zoom, fatigue now, right? And we all have some great stories of what happened on a Zoom call, right?
Oh yeah. And
some people not so great stories, but in any case, I would say that like what we're faced with right now, with XPX Triangle, is that we started during COVID. So we started all our events in Zoom, right? And then we started to have some live events. And as I talk to the presidents of other chapters, one of the things I'm hearing is that, they're going to go hybrid, right? And I'm thinking, and so you have three choices. You have hybrid, you have Zoom, or you have live, right? And I'm like, look, if we're going live, we're going live. I'm not doing hybrid. But I recognize certainly for larger events or larger organizations where, might have hundreds or thousands of people participating, having that option is certainly important, because not everybody's comfortable. And, so various events, I think that's just going to be the way it is moving forward. But I'm encouraged by, the opportunity to, like when we started Link Raleigh, I started with a young fellow who has a digital advertising agency, Blue Comet, here in Raleigh. And the deal is that he was excited about, let's figure out a way to make a mark, right? As people are coming back out and getting together and being part of that solution again and not the problem. And going into it, there were probably in Raleigh, even though it's a little town, right? I mean, it's a capital city, and it's bigger than Annapolis in that regard. But I mean, it's different. I call it a big little town. Yeah. I mean, you can walk around downtown in about 10 minutes. Anyway, but it's a great city, and we wanted to bring people together. So one of the things that we did was we took what worked from Lincolnapolis and maybe what could we improve on, right? And so we started Link Raleigh. So we're having it at the City Club in downtown Raleigh bi-monthly. So we're not overdoing it. It's invitation only. We had 45 people at our first event, and they were all either C-suite or business owners, and that's really going to be a goal of ours to bring the right people, invite the right people to those events, and so what I mean by that is that they can make decisions, right? They're decision makers. They're not people who have got to go ask their boss if they're allowed to do something. So that's that's one of the things we're trying to do.
Yeah, one of the things that you've pointed out before is that a few of the networking venues that when you started in, you thought they were very good, and then they rapidly became not worth your time was when the companies unleashed their salespeople to go to the events, right? So it's yeah.
I think you could probably appreciate this, given the size market that you work with, and it's not that different than the size clients that I work with. I mean, anywhere from maybe 5 to 10 million on up to about 100 million in size is typically the clientele that I work with. And so what I've discovered is that most businesses, once they hit about $10 million, they got a guy or a gal who does that networking for them. I mean, the owners always have their own network, but you know what? They're in a corner booth somewhere, or they're out to dinner with their core people. They're not showing up at, happy hour events. They might come to a signature event, there locally. It might be the Fort Meade Alliance. It might be, signature event for the Howard County Chamber, or, something like that. But the reality is they're not showing up every month or every 2 weeks to those kinds of events.
Yep.
So you guys know what my presence back in this conversation means. We're approaching the end of our time here. And Patrick, I wanted to see if you had a question that you would like to use as kind of the wrap up of this conversation, which has been, for me, really helpful to hear. And for, I think, a lot of our listeners who have taken a time out during the pandemic and maybe are getting back on their networking game. This conversation has probably been super helpful as well. So,
yeah, I think Jeff, ending this, sort of wrapping it up. Let's give listeners an idea of what your recommendations would be to get started on a robust networking plan. Like, how do they go make this valuable and worth their time?
Okay, so there's a third book, Super Connectors. Great book, really worth a read. Read a couple chapters, read the whole thing. But bottom line is there's an appropriate type of protocol for networking and making introductions, and so it's helpful to know that and understand that, so that you don't burn your network when you just start making introductions. You want to find out, is this somebody who you might like to meet, and can I make this connection? Don't make a promise you can't fulfill, that sort of thing. So that's really helpful. I think that was one of the key takeaways for me on that book. And the other, I think, really is, again, just, looking for a place where you can be intentional about your networking. So if it's like with XPX Triangle, I mean, I did that because I wanted to work with people who were working with a clear focus group of individuals. They're dealing with business owners who are in transition. So what does that mean? Well, from a branding perspective, it means, we need to think about how we position a company for growth before they sell, right? And so that's why I'm connected to that particular group, besides the fact that, it's a group that's very professional in terms of the people that are participating there. So, I don't know, most guys will say they married up, right? I know you did.
Thanks. It's not true though.
Anyway, the idea is maybe what you do is you think about networking up, right? You think about connecting with people and places that will elevate your game, right? And again, it is a give to get. It is being generous. It is connecting with people and then having the right attitude when you go to an event. I mean, look, I remember one very hot August afternoon. The Howard County Chamber was doing an event, outside at the lake at the Clydes, right? And I pulled up and I was just like, it's 107 degrees out. I just could not make myself go. I say, give yourself permission once in a while just to like skip the deal, go home, take a swim, do whatever you're going to do. But so, part of it's, in your head, right? And the other's kind of in your heart. I mean, it's a motive. What's your motive behind doing this stuff? And I think if you have the right motive, it'll shine through. And like I said, you need to up your game a little bit and network in the right places that make sense for your business as well.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I think that that's a great wrap up to this segment. We have really enjoyed having you on the show today. Thank you, Patrick. You were a fantastic interviewer. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in today to another edition of Reigniting Small Business. And we'll see you next week.
Bye, everybody.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.